Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Purely Flowing. And I'm Adele. I'm sorry, I just completely lost my flow. I'm Adele. I'm founder of Pure Flow State, and we specialise in sustainable brand strategy for purpose-led businesses. Now, the name Pure Flow State comes from the concept of flow state, which was coined by an Hungarian-American psychologist named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi to describe a moment of pure bliss where whatever it is you're doing absorbs your attention so much that time just slips away and you could do whatever it is you're doing forever. And wouldn't that be amazing if we could bring a little bit of that into our brands, into our lives? So I work with brands to help them achieve something along the lines of that, where everything feels like it's flowing rather than it feels like it's stagnated and stuck. And it helps them connect with the people that they can help and where they can make the most impact, which is what matters really. So we're here to share stories and to inspire people and bring some flow into everybody's business and their lives. And my guest this week is transformational life and leadership coach Asha Ghosh. She works with high performing professionals who and help them achieve success without burning out or sacrificing their well-being in any way. So welcome, Asha, to this week's show. Let me start by asking you, how are you flowing this week?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I get very excited. Delivery.
No, I'm not going.
I mean, I can sit here and talk on my own.
No, that won't be necessary.
So how have I been flowing this week? I think one of the challenges at the end of this time of year, it's quite hard to find flow, just because it is more tiring. I have builders, and there's a lot going on in my life. So actually finding those moments of flow is quite fleeting, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
No, I definitely agree with that. And it's not, I mean, we couldn't possibly be in a state where we were flowing the whole time, could we? Because we need to recognize when we're out of flow to be able to get back into it, first of all. And I don't think it would be that productive, would it, if we were constantly flowing?
No, especially if it's, I mean, when I've been in flow state myself and you're in the moment, sometimes you can get in the rabbit hole in the moment, you don't do anything. And actually all of that kind of outpouring, and then you reach that edge and then there's a bit of adrenaline, a bit of cortisol. And unless you move away from that, you can't recharge. And then the next day it can be quite traumatic.
Yeah, so just kind of going back to that, what we're going to focus on today is coming to the end of the year and just balancing all the needs, all the musts, and all the things that you have to do with actually keeping yourself sane and keeping your well-being as high as possible for this time of year. Because I think a lot of the challenges that come are challenges that are self-imposed challenges. Then you've got your external challenges as well. So just talk me through a little bit about that idea, Asha.
I think the thematic that comes through at this time of year with clients, and is very present at the moment, is that this time of year is almost like a paradox. Like there's a duality and there's conflict in that duality. What I mean by that is that we need a lot of energy. We need more energy. We need a little bit more energy than we would normally need. And we're actually quite tired. There's a level of exhaustion. There's lethargy within us because of the year that we've experienced. And so that need for energy to be able to get through the additional to-dos. I've got clients, because they're agency people, they've just been through Black Friday. They run up to that, and that whole e-com thing, it's quite hard, and it leaves them quite like, oh, and now we've got Christmas. So different people experience this run up, but it's pretty much quite tiring. And then there's the expectation of what will happen at the end of the year. Our perfectionists that kind of come in, our expectation of how we want to experience Christmas, how we want to experience family. The effort that we put into that can be quite a lot. And then that increased socialization, loads of energy. We need so much to be able to get through that versus, the time of year. I've got a client just spoken to, actually, they're Australian and they're working in Europe. And I was like, what is the difference? What do you feel about this type of year, this season? And they're like, yeah, I mean, their Christmas is normally when they have a 6-week holiday. And we're like, oh, yeah, no, we cram everything into this sort of days. And we don't have that when we move straight into the new year. And the kids don't have that much time off either. And so they're finding it difficult. And then I was like, well, what about the way that the weather feels around you? What about the way that your digestive system, do you sleep more? Just as a human being, we respond differently. And they're like, yeah, it's dark, really, really dark, early. The kids seemed tired, and we kind of went through it. And just even having that recognition of how we are personally affected by this time of year can have a really big impact on how we maybe manage ourselves over Christmas. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm a natural hibernator. We like to be warm. We had that discussion before. But I do tend to naturally want to hide. I'm not as extroverted as I would normally be in the more spring, summer months. And by February, I'm quite static, quite stagnant, just naturally. And then as the crocus and sort of appear, I start to almost appear myself.
Yeah, I mean, time teaches that, doesn't it? You know, we don't automatically realise it until maybe, you know, we're in the autumn of our lives, perhaps. I know summer is my time. My energy is better in the summer. My mindset is better in the summer. Everything just feels better in the warm. I don't know how I managed to get born here. I was born in completely the wrong country. I need to be in a hot climate. And I struggle in the winter months when it's that darkness. It's tough, isn't it? And I think, you know, going back to our original point, like you're dragging a whole year of whatever it is that has happened in that year, be it personal, be it professional, whatever. You know, there's going to be highs and lows. That, you know, take that into account. There has to be highs and lows. There's good points and bad points all the way through the year. But it's rare, and I don't know if you find this. It's rare that you get to the end of the year and think, I can't wait to get into the next year because I just want to put that one behind me and go forward. And the whole energy of like the exhaustion, the physical exhaustion of an entire year kind of really compounds in December, doesn't it? With this whole crescendo that we have going into the end of the year with Christmas and everything else. And on a business perspective, it's, you know, okay, so we need to review everything that we've done so that we can set our goals for next year. So there's still a month. I mean, that third of the quarter to reach any goals that we had in the first place. So it gets written off, doesn't it, in a lot of respects?
Yeah, I mean, what I hear with clients, and you hear this with friends when you go out, I just need to get to the end of the year. If I can just get to the end of the year. And we almost in that notion, and I get why we do it, and I'm guilty of it myself, but in that notion, we just sort of create in a survival mode, right? If I could just survive, and we can write off weeks and months in that kind of mindset. And I don't know how healthy it is for us. It's almost like a protection strategy. If I could just get to here, then I can make a decision here, because the thought of making different types of decisions at this time of year or adding to the load, adding to already something that is already full, overflowing, already all over the floor. So how can I then say to myself, oh, I've got to change, I've got to do something differently, I've got to do something in a way that I didn't do last year? No, get to the end of the year and then I'll make a decision, or then I'll change, or then I'll do something. But we end up sort of, as you exactly say, is we bypass a good couple of weeks where we just sort of meandering through. I've got somebody who wants to start work in January with me, but we couldn't start in November. And I was like, November is a great time of year. No, I just need to. I cannot think of it about any more things. I think that's a really. I got them to reflect on it. It's like, actually, how overflowing is everything? How overfull is everything? And I get people to think about, you know, what their energy is like at an emotional level, at a mental level, at a physical level. What is it? Is it overflowing because actually thinking too much? There's way too much in the system. Is it actually emotionally, I can't take any more from what is happening to me, or is it physical? Actually, I've just got, I cannot get up in the way that my body is responding to the winter. I'm not sleeping, all of those things, that metaphysical kind of thing. And it's probably a combination of one of those, but one of those, emotional, mental, physical, there'll be one of those that really is too tough to face, I guess.
Yeah, it's I think November is a brilliant time to start something, because it helps you get through December with momentum, and then you sit down at the beginning of January when all the holidays are done and dusted, and like you're ready to start. Like sitting down with a blank page on the 1st of January is not the way to start the year. Sitting down with like, okay, I'm going to put time aside in November and early December to really think about where I've come to, still make use of those weeks in December, which can be very, very useful and lucrative as well. Because when you think about people wanting to invest in things and in their business and everything, they're in the habit of spending in December. So committing to more money is generally a good thing. Like sales should be good in December, rather than people having this kind of mental block around, I can't take any more, I can't take any more. I'm complete shutdown. It's a struggle, and that's a mindset thing. How could we get around that? That whole kind of like, let's keep ourselves open. Let's keep ourselves open and up and running and functioning all the way through the month of December.
I think it's really, there's loads of platitudes I can say. Things like, letting go of unnecessary expectations, they're prioritizing joy over like things that give you no joy, and loads of things like that. And when you say that, they seem really obvious. And so you could probably choose to do any of those if you wanted to. But the reality is like when you are overloaded, thinking about those things, making choices just seems too hard. What I think is an easier access point is just thinking about your energy, considering how much do I have to give today, is allows you to make decisions about what's on your plate in a completely different way, and it's not judgmental. What I mean by that is that this morning I went to a networking event last night. I didn't eat until 10 o'clock because the event all got a little bit out of it. Everything got shifted about. And so when I woke up this morning, I had clients at 8 from UAE. And after that, I was like, okay, where am I? What have I got to give today in a way that is constructive, but also allows me to do tomorrow and the next day? And I recognized I was at 70%. So I had some energy and I knew I was doing this, and I wanted to be able to bring my full self to this without sort of lethargy being part of it, because it seems ironic after what we've just talked about. And so I've done things, but I've shifted stuff about over the next couple of days, because I've learned, as somebody that's actually been on the edge of burnout, I've learned if you just keep pushing, you keep pushing, you keep pushing, you keep pushing, the next day, you never find a moment to reconcile and recharge. And you have those things where I've got clients with like, I work best at 7 till 10. It's adrenaline, and then what happens to you tomorrow? You fitted in those 3 hours, the lethargy that you have and the lack of energy and the lack of enthusiasm you have maybe tomorrow afternoon, probably could have done that there. We don't gain. We think we gain because our brain's like, we've done something there. But you can't trick energy. it's there or it's not.
No.
So yeah, back to your question is like, how can we help ourselves? It's just that one thing. Is like, in the mornings, where am I at? Like, what am I prepared to do? And what is the best thing? What's the best stuff that I can get through? And back to who you are and how you proposition is, what will bring me into that flow state? What is going to enliven me? What will bring me some moments of like joy? What will get stuff through that needs to get through? Different mindset, rather than I just need to get through this.
Yeah.
The pushing, man, that's hard. It's enforcing you, and it's kind of automatically has this voice. It's like, what you're doing isn't enough. You need to do more, and that puts pressure on us.
Yeah, and it's not sustainable either. Let's talk a little about, you just touched on it there, that you had approached burnout yourself. So let's talk a little bit about your background, and obviously a time when you were very much out of flow, and what led you to do what you're doing now.
I worked in agencies. I was a consultant, just like you, 15 years. I started in marketing and PR. I started in PR, experiential events with lots of big brands. Loved it. And then worked my way through across social media, digital tech, all sorts of different things. And then back in 2015, I got the job title that I wanted, and I was the only female person of colour on a board. And it just didn't bring me what I thought it was going to bring me. There was an incongruence in who I felt, and the way that I chose to deal with that was I worked harder. Okay. So I was working longer and harder because I thought if I work longer and harder, then other people will see the value in me. If I work longer and harder, I'll feel better about my self-worth. If I work longer and harder, then something will happen. The universe will see, and I will magically be elevated. I don't know. There was all sorts going on, but I had this kind of mindset of that is the only way that I could operate at. I had a moment on the M6 where the traffic was completely static, and it was static for quite a while, and it was midweek, and I'd come back from meetings, and I just thought, if I really slowly just crashed into the car in front, I could legitimately tell my manager that I'm going home and going to have a little rest. And in that moment, what I realised is the only way that I could admit that I was tired and I needed a break was to create some ludicrous situation, which I was obviously lying about. And it really impacted me. It was like the penny dropped. Oh, this isn't working. And then when I started to reel back from it, I realised how hard I'd worked. I realised how exhausted I was. I was not exhausted in a holiday will get me back. I was exhausted at a mental, physical, and emotional, and I had nothing to give. And so why do I work with those humans that have experienced that? Is because A, I have a lived experience in it, and B, I then went and did something really dumb. I'm a bright woman, and my clients are all bright, and they know that they're tired, and they know they want change, and they know they want to do things that are different. And what did I do in my wisdom? I started a part-time master's in leadership coaching. Oh, yes.
Because I haven't got enough to do.
Yeah, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
We figure out an exit strategy, great, but we don't really evaluate what I've just said is how much energy do I have to give.
Yeah.
How much I was so frightened of letting go of wages. I was so frightened of letting go of my perceived title, my job title, and therefore my self-worth. So frightened of pivoting around things, and I couldn't see another way. And yes, doing that master's obviously has got me here today, but in doing that, my life imploded. All sorts happened to us as a family, and it wasn't the best decision. So why do I do that? Why do I do the job that I do? Is because bright people don't always make smart decisions.
No, they don't, and they can't see it. This is the whole, the same old, you can't see the label when you're inside the bottle. You really can't see what's happening. And other people around you can see that, but they don't always say it because you don't want to hear it either. Because, I know, if I'm going into the stage, I have a tendency to go a little bit into overdrive and over productivity and keep doing and doing and doing. And then I'll get to a point where I'll realize that I'm really tired and I need to take a step back and I need to relax and I don't need to kind of like come away. Fortunately, I've never been in a phase of burnout, but I do notice when, okay, I can feel it ramping up now and I'm just saying yes to too many things that I don't need to be saying to, and then I start saying no a little bit more. Somebody was talking to me the other day, and I can't remember if it was on the podcast or something else, talking about a no spree, having a no spree and just going out there and saying no. And that felt like a really positive way of managing things, but kind of building that into our usual way of doing things rather than just kind of like going and going and going until we burn out. That must have been quite scary. to be sat on the M6 and thinking, I'm going to have a car accident now so I don't have to go into work. And it wasn't that you hated your work. I think that's the big distinction, isn't it? You didn't hate your work.
No, I didn't. I felt stupid, actually, and guilty. The emotions were very tough, really tough. I felt stupid because I was like, why couldn't I see what was happening to me? Although I still made a dumb decision after that, just saying, caveating all of this. I felt guilty because I'd done this to myself, and I felt shame because I'd done it to myself. All heavy, really heavy emotions at a time when I wasn't feeling the best about myself anyway. Exhausted. What seems to happen, we get into this cycle of self-doubt, our worthiness then becomes around our productivity lessons, or our ability to perform at a perceived version of ourselves changes, and all of that kind of stuff. And my self-worth was just so linked to that. I couldn't see it. So back to your point, it's like, did people tell me I was exhausted or help me? No, because we were all doing the same thing. Like, I was in agency. It has a cadence. It has a way of being that is that I can only attune to unless you're in it. It has a drum beat. And it took 3 years of not being in that to allow that drum beat to come out of my body.
Wow. 3 years.
And I work with clients who I've worked with highly professional, like big job titles, which I'm like, ooh, wow. And we still make daft decisions. We can be the brightest humans on earth, and we don't see it. We just keep pushing through it.
And how would you approach kind of trying to get around that and checking in with ourselves in some way to stop us making those silly decisions and save ourselves a lot of hassle and heartbreak, really, at the end of the day, isn't it?
There are so many different inroads in, and it depends on you as a human, and your learning style, how you want to show up, all of that type of stuff. And it's also dependent on where you are. If you're an exhausted human, then we work on your exhaustion. We have to find ways of breaking the cycle that you're in, and it has to be lowest common denominators. Versus somebody who wants success, back to how I perceive myself. It's re-strategizing how we get the performance in a different kind of way, not using only energy. And that's about that's looking at how they lead. That's how looking at the strategies that they've put in the business. That's looking at how they think about their career trajectory, what we need to do to make more money. But without actually having to do some of those things. So there isn't one solution. But what we always have to come back to is everything's about awareness, isn't it? The more awareness you can, how your energy that you have, the more cognizant that you are, the more you can choose to do something else. The reason why we sit, one of the reasons why, no matter how many podcasts we listen to, no matter how many books we read, how many articles, how many conferences we go to, we're really G'd up. But it's really hard to make those changes. And as human beings, our whole brain is wired to like, let's not do that. That's
not safe.
Yeah. This way is perfectly fine. We've done it for years. It's absolutely fine. So you're not only battling the fact that you're finding it hard, but you've got your brain going, ooh, do you really want to do that? We're all of that, like neuroplasticity. Do it this way. Do it this way. Yeah. So it's quite complex. But in its simplest terms when we're wanting to change, if we can bring some awareness about what it is that we want to change, and then we have to build the skills. And so the awareness will always be a little bit more than the skills. Yeah. And so if you're just aware that actually it's going to be a bit clunky and we're not going to get it right, we'll try stuff out. Some of it, because you are trying, you're changing something about yourself. It's just, it won't be one of those big can't be a reveal. We're humans.
Yeah.
We work totally a different way. The one thing I'd say about that is as we humans, we've got this bias. Oh, it's not enough. We can't see it. We can't see what we've achieved. It's really hard for us to notice things in that kind of way. And we're so blinded by other things. It's fine. That's why change is so hard.
Change is really hard. And I think, what you touched on there about having, found our value in what it is that we do. Like, our identity is very much embedded into what we do, and, how, and we we spend so much time working anyway, and like, that's our culture, isn't it? Like we spend so many hours of the day in a job or in a career role, if we're fortunate, a career role that actually fulfills us and everything. We get lost in that, in our identity of becoming this person. And I'd like to ask you about things like, the signs that maybe you could benefit from a change, or you could explore other options, or things like you were saying, like you never quite felt satisfied no matter how much you did or how far you went in your career. Is that because of our human nature of we just want more, more, more? Or is that because perhaps what we thought was right for us and what was going to fulfill us isn't really the thing? And is there even a thing? Wow, that's a lot.
There's so much there. I suppose the biggest thing in that moment for me is I wasn't grounded. I was thinking way too much about stuff. I'd wound myself up. I was pumped full of adrenaline and cortisol. I wasn't sleeping properly. There was a lot of things happening at a metaphysical level as well as an emotional level. And therefore, everything kind of just kept pushing. It was knocking more and more out. So my health wasn't there. And so anything in and around that, we don't notice tiredness as a symptom. It's symptomatic. We just accept it. Really, when you ask people we talk about exhaustion, or about how are you? Oh, I'm very tired. Yes, it's a social etiquette, isn't it? I'm tired.
Yeah. But busy, tired. Yeah, little badges, aren't they? Yeah.
But we don't see it as actually it's a symptom of of stuff that's happening. It's very acceptable. Tiredness and busyness are just very accepted.
Yeah.
So that's a mindset thing. But what else? But there was so much else going on. Is like back to the point I was making around when we get trapped into doing rather than being or present or grounded, we just our strategy is to do more, be more, because we seek gratification and satisfaction. And depending on how we're built, if we're type A, it's about getting through that list. If we are people pleasers, it's about being that engaged. Whatever our drivers are, that pushing, we kind of push ourselves, and then we seek gratification in other places. If I was to say what do you notice, is when you just can't remember joy, where you just can't remember satisfaction, when you really struggle to find it, there's incongruence there. You're living your values, you've probably you're exhausted, you're whatever those things are. That's a pretty big signal that maybe some sort of change, some sort of awareness about what is going on for you would be beneficial.
And I think it's important what you noted as well, that when you did kind of find that awareness and you realized, okay, I need to make some changes here, that your whole life imploded. And that's important to note as well, that what's happening in one area is happening in other areas as well, or even if it's not happening in other areas, it's having an effect on the other areas, which is why it's important to bring everything together. You can't just treat a knee. You've got to treat the whole body, because whatever's happening in the knee is affecting the hip and the back potentially, and you could be walking lopsided or whatever, so which brings us back, the life and leadership coach. It's self-leadership as well as leadership in whatever role we choose to take in our career. What are your thoughts about that?
100%. I can't separate out the two. You have I think because of my personality, what I'm interested in, how I've been on the learning journey since I was very young, and all of those lived experiences. And I couldn't separate out. I just couldn't feel like I could ever be an exec coach, and working on those leadership kind of verticals and improving skills in that kind of performative kind of way. Because over here is, think about identities. At the time, I thought I was only the job title. But actually, I was a partner to somebody. I was a parent. I was I was a daughter. I had all the things that I was doing as well, like my hobbies, my cook, my this, my that. There were so many different identities that I had, and I hadn't seen them, but I was and noticed them. The one that I sort of focused on was this job title, this career path, and there was a lot of comparison. Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, all of that kind of stuff. And so there's all of that kind of happening for somebody, as well as how we role model has an effect on our families, has effect on our team, it has an effect on our culture that we work in, it has an effect on our society, it has an effect on our neighbours. So you can't, I don't personally, and from a modality perspective, can separate out the two, because I think I bring myself authentically to everything. And there are people that need to do that. There are people that are very, very separate. And they would work with exec coaches. But actually, if you're somebody that kind of said, this is happening over here and this is happening over there, and it seems to interconnect, and you can see that interconnection, then working with somebody like me, you're kind of working at that duality. And as humans, we can cope with polarities. We can cope with this and that. We just, our brains go, well, we can't. But we can. We absolutely can. We wouldn't have got to the point where we are in lives, living how we are and being dynamic beings, if we couldn't cope with those polarities. It's just we assume that we can't. We always underestimate what we're capable of.
That's an interesting point. And going back to our original conversation about this particular time of year and burnout and people getting tired and navigating that balance that they need to find with functioning and either potentially running a business or fulfilling their work commitments, as well as being okay at home and making sure that everything runs smoothly, because it's an exciting time as well and we want to get excited about it. So
some people hate it. I am a lover. I love the run up. It's all of that, and because of having builders, I can't do any of that, so I'm having to navigate it in a different kind of way. Some people like Hallmark movies.
Channel 5, that's where it's at. So what would you suggest to people who are starting to feel that, okay, it's the first week of December, it's still the first week of December, it feels like Christmas is like next week to me, because I feel I've had so much hype. Things are starting earlier as well, that's a given. But what do you suggest to people to kind of start the month strong and stay strong throughout the whole month?
I suppose my big thing is get to grips, notice your energy. If you can bring greater awareness from an emotional state, how have I woken up? Am I actually in a good place? Am I in an indifferent place, or actually is there much more going on? Mentally, how busy am I? Or even physically, what does my body tell me? Any of that data, it's brilliant data, and it is ever present. It is much easier for people to notice what is happening at a body level, to be thinking about things when you're already an exhausted human. Your body has oodles of data. If your foot hurts, if your this hurts, if you're achy and breaky, your body's telling you it's knackered. If you're emotionally a little bit all over the place and you can't regulate it, there's stuff happening for you, which could be a myriad of hormones and what's happening in your family, but something is happening, and you can't keep pushing through that without it detrimentally pushing your well-being to somewhere that you don't want it to be. So just having that notion, here, okay, tomorrow I might not be, the next day I might not be, but it's very much presence around here, and just reevaluating what's on your to-dos just would bring you as a human just a bit more flexibility, rather than this automated, like, we just get through the list, because some of it needs to be done, but some of it is, the world won't fall apart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, minimize intervention in that kind of way. And I love that idea of checking in the morning when you wake up and you think, actually, how am I feeling today? How am I coming today? Because if you've gone to bed late, it looks like you did last night, you went to a networking thing, you were in bed late, you ate late, that is going to have an impact on the following day, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, gone are the days when I was, out partying and doing stuff and then going to work and not that human anymore. We shift about. And I think also the last thing I'll say about it as well is, like, if you're in the education system as well, you've got children, there's a cadence with them. They're tired. your parents are tired. Everyone's sort of like, everyone has this thing. So there's a system, there's an ecosystem. It's not just you. Everyone around you is also experiencing it. So it's not contagious, is not the right word, but it's almost like if there is lethargy around us, there is exhaustion around us, and we're responding to those experiences. Back to the point I was making is, rather than trying to think it through and like ask the why, everyone asks why. Don't be the why. Just feel it, notice it, and it's like, okay, something is occurring. I just need to be mindful of it.
Yeah. And how much do you feel that brands and employers have a responsibility towards the people that are in their teams to be able to mitigate some of this from happening and kind of catching it before it happens?
I can't say that legitimately without being biased, because I have lived experiences. People wouldn't come to me unless they had lived experiences where their organisation doesn't empower them to make different types of decisions. I feel like I could, and it's back to that thing, I can talk about what you should do from a culture perspective and all of those things, and an employer brand perspective. But we are humans, and we're commodities in an engine that needs to make money, and it's it's quite difficult for organisations to figure out how they navigate that. And depending on your manager, depending on the culture, will have so many different you'll have so many different experiences. But if I wouldn't exist if brands and organizations were able to manage the well-being of their employees in a more effective way.
Personally, I think there's a space for it, and for brands to create this culture where people are looked after, because eventually, that is going to have an impact on the bottom line, because you've got people who are happy, they're going to be performing better. You give them some meaning, they're going to do better, they're going to enjoy what they do, they're going to tell others about how great it is to work there as well. And getting that right comes down to looking after the individuals, and making sure that they're given the space to talk if they're not, if they're not feeling great, or the role is becoming too much for them, and that gets overlooked so much. I mean, and I won't even go down the route of poor leadership, because I've been affected by that, we've all been affected by that, where we see that people are in leadership roles and need support and don't get it, and support in the way that it's not easy to lead. It's not.
One quote that I put on LinkedIn recently is, I've got 35 hours of meetings this week, and I've got 35 plus hours of work to do. How am I going to do it? And that's not uncommon. If you think about your career today, that's not really that uncommon. How do I get through things? And there's a multiplier effect. As a leader, do I protect my team? Do I pass it through the system? How do I take it upstairs? There are so many. It's systemically a challenge. So it comes back to what we talk about with clients is what can you cope with? What can you get through? What is imperative? What actually is somebody else's priority? What can we say no to? You have to start with those things. Quite often it's like none of this, but it's a base of, well, if you do this, what will happen next week? What happens the next week after? We'll work on your way, and we'll keep tracking this, and we'll see what happens. Because once you can see it and you want to change it, then it's quite difficult as a human. And the other thing is like agency. My own experiences, we're all doing it. We all work those hours. So why would I work those hours? So it's culturally accepted. It's normative behavior.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't I do it?
Yeah, I know. And it's true. Like when you're in an environment where everybody's doing a certain thing, you kind of have to do that. Otherwise, it's a problem if you don't. And I'm not saying it's either good or bad or whatever. But it certainly becomes an expectation. And then what I see when I talk to people who then come out of that and become entrepreneurs is that they take that into entrepreneurship as well, and they're sitting at their desk, right, 9 o'clock, I'm sitting at my desk. I'm going to be here till 6 or 7. I'm going to put in all these hours because they're so conditioned into that. And it takes quite a lot of work and awareness about realizing I don't have to sit here if I don't want to. Like, this isn't why I set up my business. I set up my business to not have to do that, but we carry it with us, don't we? It's so ingrained.
I've got a client at the moment who's got an amazing opportunity, but they're working 7 days a week, and it's that thing where how reflective of that is the industry. You know, we've both been in the accelerator program, and we listen to these entrepreneurs, and they tell us pretty much the same thing: working long hours, working in the night, working at weekends. So it is accepted that that's the only way that a business can develop and grow. And I don't think it's a right or wrong way. There is no balance. You know, there is no work-life balance, but there has to be an ebb and flow. Because the whole point of polarities is that one will push you in a direction, but you have to recognize that there's a tension on the other side. And so it has to flip the other way. But when the only way I describe the clients, like, it's like when your pendulum is at the swing, so you're doing the fullest, you're doing so much, it has to swing back.
Yeah.
No other way. You have to swing back. And the only other side of that kind of full on is exhaustion. It is finding different ways of getting through that productivity. And some of that's delegation. Some of that is finding different ways of getting other people to do it. Some of that is technology. You know, there are lots of ways of getting performance improved without some of that. But you know as well as I do, it's like, well, when do I do it?
Yeah.
To speed up. We know it's right.
Yeah.
Will we?
No, I'm gonna try, and I've definitely been implementing more of that in recent months. I would say, you know, throughout this year, I've been much more conscious of the decisions that I'm making in a way that, okay, why am I doing this? Like, am I doing this because it's going to serve the purpose of my brand or get to my goals, or am I doing it because FOMO, or because I feel that I have to? And that's helped me a lot. It's hard. It's, you know, it's hard, but once you start making those decisions, it's quite empowering.
It's authentic. So doesn't it feel
Yeah.
It feels really real? The way that you're talking about it, that's your brand. That's who you are. And I suppose one of the reasons why people either like me or dislike me or are drawn to me to be is I have this, I get it. I absolutely get. I get the mindset that we're in. I get where we've come from. I get why we make these daft decisions. I also have trained for the other bit. So I was like, okay, what do we need to bring over here in to help you? So I'm living my brand, and I'm living proof that actually, you know, you can survive, you can move forward, you can do different things.
Yeah.
But that authenticity, what you were just saying about there, I understand what your values are in that statement there. I get it. I know who you are. I know who your brand is. And so, you know, increases your marketability.
The authenticity, absolutely. Yeah. We must, to find that balance, we have to be authentic to ourselves, don't we? And admitting that there's 24 hours in a day, and there is whatever percent of energy we have to bring to that day. And I'm definitely going to do that reflection in the morning. I really like that idea.
The other thing is I permit everyone to get things wrong. We're human. Like, we get things wrong. I've made mistakes. I made mistakes actually this week, and I didn't go in there with the intention of doing it. The intention was to solve a problem, and actually inadvertently I've caused more problems. I didn't know that. You know, it's back to that in like conscious competency. I had never tried something before. I was doing it. The learning curve, the outcome. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I could beat myself up, and I have done that. Like, that not getting right, that perfectionism, but it gets me nowhere. It serves me nowhere, and I hold my hands up. Like, I'm human, and sometimes you make daft decisions as humans. And it's what you do next, I suppose. That
yes, it is. It's how you proceed after that. Asha, I've loved having you again today. It's been really great. I've loved all your insights, and hopefully, well, I am positive that some of those insights are going to help people get through December and not write it off as that month that we're just going to kind of let get to the end. It's still a month. It's a third of the last quarter. There's still time. There's still time to reach the goals, and it's in the perfect point to be setting goals to going into the next year and starting strong rather than starting with a blank page. So we'll leave the links to where you can find Asha below in the comments. Thanks for joining us, and look forward to seeing you again next week.